fractions, we are going to add our numerators, which is 1 plus 1 plus 1, which is 3, and our denominator stays the same. So we need 3/4 of a cup. Another way we could do that is if we know that we have 1/4 and we times by 3. Remember, we can put a 1 underneath our whole number and we multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 1 is 4, and we still get the same answer of 3/4 of a cup. You could also add, this would be 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4 to get your answer for how many fourths of a cup you're going to need. All right, for flour, so let's go back up here. We need 3/4 of a cup, so make sure we have that. For flour, you needed 3½ tablespoons of flour. So we can multiply 3½ or that's the same as 3.5 times 3. That would be 15, carry your 1. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So here we have one number past our decimal. We have one number past our decimal. We have 10½ tablespoons of flour is what we need. We could draw our pictures. 1, 2, 3½ 1, 2, 3½ 1, 2, 3½ and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These two together make 10, plus your half makes 10½ Okay? Now, we're going to move on to brown sugar. So brown sugar, we needed 1½ cups. So brown sugar, we needed 1½ teaspoons. So 1.5 times 3, because remember we're still tripling it, we needed to serve 12 people. So 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Here's one number past my decimal, so we need to move it over once. So we need 4½ cups of brown sugar. Again, I would have 1 plus the half, 1 plus the half, 1 plus the half. So I would have these two halves, half plus a half, makes one whole. So now we have 1, 2, 3, plus this one makes 4½ Okay, so back up to here, we have 4½ Now, heavy cream is the last one that we need. Cream is 1 cup, and we have 1 times 3 is 3 cups now for our new recipe. Remember, we were tripling that recipe, so we would have 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, and that would give you 3 cups of cream. Great job. Now, the next part is halving it. So when we halve something, that means that we have to divide it by, yep, you're right, 2. So we're going to divide this by 2. So now instead of us multiplying by 2 to double it or tripling it, timesing it by 3, we're going to half it. So we're going to divide it by 2. So remember we started out serving 4 people for our original recipe. Well, if I divide that by 2, I'm now going to serve only 2 people. Okay, so we're going to half everything. So when I have mine, and I'm going to look at this to where I have milk, and I have 3½ cups of milk. Sometimes it's easier for me to draw a picture. So I would have 1, 2, 3½ 1, 2, 3, and this is a half. And if I know that I needed to split something in half, I know that half of 3, 1/2 of 3 is 1½ half. 1/2 of 3 is 1.5. Plus, this 1/2, half of a half is a fourth, so I'm going to have to make sure that I know that this is 2/4. So when I add these now together, I would get 1 3/4. But it's sometimes easier to let's just do 3.5 divided by 2 because we know how to do that division. 2 goes into 3 once. We get 2. Subtract, we get 1. Bring down my 5. 2 goes into 15 7 times. 7 times 2 is 14. Subtract, I get 1. Don't forget we got to add that decimal right here and bring it on down. So 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. Subtract, we get 0. Our decimal point goes straight up. 1 7/500 is the same thing as 1 3/4. So these are the same answer. Okay, so here's our next one. Our next one is sugar. Remember, for sugar, we had 1 cup of sugar. Sugar, we had 1 cup. So now we have half of a cup because 1 divided by 2 equals 1/2. If I have a cup and I split it in 2, we would have 1/2 here and 1/2 here. And so you can see that this would make 1/2 cup of sugar. Eggs. We needed 8 eggs to start our original recipe. Now we have to do 8 divided by 2. Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4. I could draw my picture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I split this into 2 parts. This would be 4 eggs. This would be 4 eggs. The next one is unsalted butter. For our butter, we had 6 tablespoons. So we can do 6 divided by 2, which is 3. I could draw my picture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what I'm starting with. Split this in 2, and now I have 2 groups of 3. So my answer here is 3. For vanilla, I needed 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Again, if I needed a 1 and I'm dividing by 2, 1 divided by 2 is the same thing as writing it like this as a fraction. I have 1 whole. I split it down the middle. That's 1/2 and a half. So I know that I needed 1/2 tablespoons of vanilla. Salt. Salt. I needed 1 teaspoon of salt. Again, 1 divided by 2 is the same as 1 divided by 2. And I draw my picture, split it down the middle. We have a 1/2 and a half. That right there gives me a 1/2 teaspoon of salt as well. And last but not least, my bananas. Bananas. I needed 4 bananas. I split 4 in 2, so I divided by 2. I need now 2 bananas. If I drew my picture, and I have 4, I now have 2 and 2 make 4. So I need 2 bananas. All right, so now let's look at our unsalted butter for our toppings. Our unsalted butter for our toppings. So we needed butter. We needed 1/4 of butter. And so when I needed 1/4 of butter, I know that I need to split this into half. Okay, so I need to divide 1/4 by 2. Well, I know that 1/4 is the same as 2,500. And I divide that by 2. I would now have, if you look close, that's going to give me 2, subtract, that's going to give me 5 That's going to go in twice. That's going to be 4 right here. 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Subtract and I get 0. This would be one option. I would get 125 thousandths of a part of butter. But I know that if I do this, 1/8 plus 1/8, because 4 times 2 is 8. So I know that if I have an 8, I could do 2/8. 2/8 is the same thing as 1/4. So a half of a fourth is going to be 1/8. My answer here is going to be 1/8. Flour. Flour. We need, let me see. For flour, we needed 3½ teaspoons. Flour, we needed 3½ teaspoons. And we're halving it. So we need to divide it by 2. So I know that if I half my flour, it's the same thing as what I did over here for my milk, right? So I'm going to go 3½, which is 3.5, divided by 2. That's going to give me 1. Subtract and bring it down. 2 goes into 15 7 times. Subtract, I get 1. Bring down my 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Subtract, I get 0. My decimal goes straight up. So now I have 1 75/100, which I know that's the same thing as 1 3/4. Okay? So now, let's see, that's 1 3/4. Brown sugar, we're almost there, guys. So we have brown sugar. Let's see. We are going to have, for brown sugar, 1½ cups of brown sugar. And right here, if I divide this into 2 parts, I know that 1 divided by 2 would be a half. Half of a half is 1/4. I know that this is also 1.5 as a decimal, so I could divide. That would be 0. 2 goes into 5 2 times, sorry. 2 times to get 4. No, that's not what we need to do. Scratch that. All right, so we're going to go 1½ divided by 2. See, I even make mistakes. 2 can't go into 1, so that's 0. 2 goes into 15 7 times. 7 times 2 is 14. Subtract, I get 1. Placeholder. Bring down that 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. To get 10, subtract, we get 0. So right here, we have 7,500, which is the same thing as 3/4. So here we have 3/4. And our cups of heavy cream. Last thing, our cups of heavy cream. We needed 1 cup of cream. So half of that would be 1 divided by 2. So half of 1 is half of a cup. All right, friends, so now let's think about this last one. If you were to make a recipe that served 5 times as many people, this is going to be times by 5. So we're going to serve now 4 people to start our original recipe times 5. I'm now going to serve 20 people. Okay? Now, so what I need to do here is now multiply all of this by 5. Good luck. The rest is all on your own. Have a great night.